Republican issue, it's an American issue. You know, we've got the potential in America to unleash the greatest job-producing engine the world's ever known, and that's the American entrepreneur. This is the job-creating engine, the true job-creating engine in America. And there are practical steps that we can take and have taken in the House of Representatives. And I truly believe, with every ounce of my soul and energy, that those 28 bills that we have sitting in the Senate right now on Harry Reid's desk, those bills, maybe they're not perfect, but the Senate should take those bills up and should either amend them and send them back to the House or come up with their own legislation. But this is where we're wrapped around the axle as a country, because they're sitting there in the United States Senate on Senator Reid's desk. That's an absolute true fact. A third priority of mine, in addition to defending our men and women in uniform and job creation, is controlling federal spending. It's just a stunning statement when our former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mullen, so many of you know what he said, the quote, the national debt is the #1 threat to our country. This is a stunning statement to come from, at the time, our top military officer. We've got to arrest this trajectory that we're on. And I hope you'll ask me some questions about that, because we can circle back to exactly what we're doing and how I think we ought to get out of that. But everything I've been advocating for, and my votes reflect a deep commitment to making sure that, that we arrest that and make sure that we are able to meet our obligation to the next generation of Americans. And finally, changing Congress. My fourth priority when I sought this office was changing Congress rather than having Congress change me. Thelma knows the incredible pressures that are up there. And my first line of defense, I think, truly is my wife, Terry. So many of you know Terry. She's a lovely lady, my wife for 31 years, and she is just rock solid. And I mean this. It's part of our very deliberate plan that we have in our life to not have Congress change me, but truly to influence and move Congress in a different direction. And there are 3 specific things that I'm doing in serving you and your families that are a practical expression of how I'm seeking to do that, to change that institution, which is frankly a pretty daunting task. And the first one is this, is bringing a higher degree of civility back to our public square. And part of it, for me, I was taught to say yes sir and no sir and yes ma'am and no ma'am, and you refer to those with in authority with their proper title. So you will hear me, and I'm not suggesting you ought to do this yourself. Well, I guess I do think it's a pretty good idea, but you do what you choose to do. But I always refer to the president as the president. It's President Obama. Now, I have profound objections to so much of what he's doing. I mean, I gave you a classic example there just off the coast of Virginia. We have the potential to create 18,000 local jobs. Great paying jobs to change our economy here. He's standing between that, but I still refer to him as the president. And I share with friends, I say, look, civility is not weakness. It's not weak to refer to him as the president. And just being respectful of other folks there and elevating the civility. The second part is this relentless, unapologetic pursuit of the facts. What are the true facts of a matter? It is very difficult to get and agree upon just what the baseline is of facts up in Washington. So I'm very deliberate about that. What are the facts of a matter? And if what I'm saying matches up with the facts, terrific. But if something I've been given to say or suggested that I might say, I look at it and it doesn't match up with the facts, I'm not going to say it. Or I'm going to be very deliberate about not saying something that's not accurate and true. And third is just not questioning the motives of those with whom we disagree. You know, I don't know exactly where everybody is politically here tonight with a group this large. In fact, I know there's at least one Democrat in the room. I won't point them out, but there's at least one, I know, for sure. And But you know what? No, listen. This is, Democrats have fought and died for this country. They have a seat at the table. And we disagree on a lot of things, but there's common ground. I am convinced of this. I am absolutely convinced of this. There is some common ground. I truly don't know a Democrat, I don't know one personally, who wants us to go off the cliff and go into bankruptcy. Now, the path that we're on indeed is taking us there. And I'm fully aware of that. But when I talk to my friends who are Democrats and I'm making a real effort to meet them and get to know them and tell them how difficult this is, your schedule's so demanding, you really have to make a deliberate effort to get to know those on the other side. But here's the reality of our situation as Americans. We may pass a bill that has 240 plus members, all Republicans in the House, and we might feel good about that, and we put out a press release. But you know what? That bill will never become law. That's the reality of it. We've got to win over about 20 or 30 or 40 Democrats. We've got to have something that reflects common sense and common ground. And I am convinced in my service to you that exists. And I think of it this way. Think of it as like two circles, okay, in a kind of a horizontal, like two plates. Let's make it real simple. Plate, because that's where I understand it. Two plates, the Democrats and the Republicans, okay? And you start to move those two circles together, these two circles, and at some point they start to overlap. Where those two circles overlap, I think of that as common ground. And when I find common ground, I celebrate it. And I want to have the courage to vote for it. And I really think that's essential for us to navigate through this. The chaplain, where are you, sir, who gave our invocation? And, one of the things that...
I've never been called a chaplain before.
Okay, well, for tonight, honorary title.
Thank you.
The chaplain was, you kind of interwove that, that joke in there, and I thought that was appropriate. And, the whole thing about just getting involved and making sure that, the time is now to get involved. It really does remind me of this, and I'm going to close with this, and then we'll get to the questions and answers, is that it's a historic quote that my wife here and I really lean on. It's these words: duty is ours, results are God's. John Quincy Adams. Duty is ours, results are God's. Now, the only way I can rest in this part that says results are God's, the latter part, is only if I know with certainty that I've done the former. That is, duty is ours. That I know that my family and I, we are all in. I need to know that on November the 6th at 7 p.m., when that poll closes, I've got to know that I've done everything I could to do to prevail. Not to elevate a person, not so that I can have a lapel pin, not so admirals call me sir. Frankly, I'm not into that. That doesn't do anything for me. But I tell you what, not all ideas are equal, and not all leaders are equal. And we need folks in Washington who know how to create jobs, who know we need to move toward energy independence, who know we need to wisely arrest this trajectory of federal spending, who know that we need to have strong national defense, who know we need to stand with our veterans and make sure that the promises that were made to you are honored, and to make sure that we wisely protect and preserve Medicare. And that's what I'm all about. I'm Scott Ridgell. I'm delighted and honored to be with you here tonight, and I look forward to all the questions. Thank you for your service, and thank you for having me out tonight. Thank you. Now, Pam, I don't know how you want to do the questions. Any way's fine with me.
I'd say just raise hands, and you go for as long as you think you can. You seem like the voice get a little raspy.
That's okay. Now, hey, sir.
How about Paul Hirschfield? How are you going to handle this upcoming race?
The question is Paul Hirschfield. Paul Hirschfield is a friend of mine. He is my Democratic opponent. I really I welcome Paul to the race. I think it is good to and healthy and expected in our country to have a spirited debate about substance and about where we go as a country. Now, I am convinced of this, that with a careful examination of the two alternatives, if people really know the difference between the two of us and where we stand on different issues, I believe we'll prevail, Admiral. It's going to take a full court press, and as I call it, just an all-in approach, and we are there. I'll let Mr. Hirschfield speak for himself. I've articulated my views here tonight. I'll be very transparent with you on this. Trying to understand exactly what it believes on different issues has been somewhat difficult because I haven't debated them yet. Haven't really seen anything of substance come out in terms of policy. That's not that's just where we are with that. But I know we can start with this. If he were to prevail, I'm certain of this, and I speak with this with confidence, a high degree of confidence. The first thing that happens when you're at your first day of work as a new member of Congress, what happens is you take the oath of office by the Speaker, and then, well, actually, the first thing you do is you actually vote who's going to be the Speaker, and it's a voice vote. And Thelma remembers that day. I certainly remember that day for me. But I can tell you this, my first vote, my voice vote would not be for Nancy Pelosi. And I think that represents, and all that represents in the direction that would take our country, that's not right. And I go a different direction, continue to advocate for the things that I've articulated and shared with you here tonight, Admiral. And I welcome the debate. I really do. I look forward to our first debate. And I think there's 3 of them so far. Yes. Patrick.
Congressman,
yes, sir.
Thanks for coming out. The Affordable Health Care Act has certainly got a lot of press, but it's been overshadowed by other things. But I'd kind of like to bring the discourse back to the Affordable Health Care Act.
Yes.
And a couple of issues that those of us who sit back and watch see that it's not a good idea, it's bad execution, and has there been any discussion in Congress with regard to opening up buying health care across state lines, toward reform, those kinds of things that are going to bring real change to the healthcare environment as opposed to another government mandate?
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for your public service. And I appreciate the question. I think it was really a bold and wise decision for Governor Romney to select my friend and colleague, the former chairman of the Budget Committee, Paul Ryan. Why? Well, first of all, I know him to be a really sharp fella and loves his country, and he's a fiscal conservative, and he really understands the risk that it poses to our country if we stay on this trajectory. But what it does too, Patrick, is it says to our friends who are Democrats, we are not afraid to speak on Medicare. In fact, I welcome a conversation. This is a conversation we must have as a country. The President himself has said, hey, absent reform, Medicare is going bankrupt. So what's happening here with Medicare and the Affordable Care Act, the reason I mention them is because they're linked. Over $700 billion was taken out of Medicare. Over $700 billion was taken out of Medicare and used and shifted over to the Affordable Care Act. Now, I call it the Affordable Care Act. This is another part of that civility part. You notice I haven't called it Obamacare because I try to refer things to without making them personal. You know, they call it the Affordable Care Act, the Patient Protection Act, but it's not. It's probably the most misnamed piece of legislation really to roll out of. It's really I think an egregious abuse of the English language to call it that, the Affordable Care Act, the Patient Protection Act. So the fact that I call him the president doesn't mean that I don't disagree with him. It is they've really taken a tremendous amount of funding away from Medicare to move it over into the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act. Also, and that will indisputably restrict choices for our seniors.